Greetings, ladies and metalgents, and welcome to the latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Release the Humans, written by LeVentNoir. The High Tyrant of Megaswath Domain looked down from the elevated throne it resided on. The tyrant was an Oimalan, a cruel and vicious species that had conquered a number of sectors through use of various psychic abilities that more than compensated for their weaker herbivorous biology. Which is why Jartel of the Shenfen was so furious. The Oimalan had recently deployed stasis field projector missiles into combat arenas, stopping the Shenfen's easy reconquest of the sector. Jartel had been forced to ground, hiding from scouts, evading and killing a number of Oimalan. Their psychic powers were useless against the Shenfen, a carnivorous hive mind whose programming was unavoidable. Both sides were at an impasse. The Oimalan unable to harm the Shenfen while the stasis fields were up, and the Shenfen unable to escape while it remained. With his immunity to the psychic control, the Oimalan would just prey, easily slaughtered.
Combatants, you have been defeated on the fields of combat. You are unsuited for reprogramming, and would resist application to the more brutish control methods.
The High Tyrant had risen and started to proclaim judgment of Jartel.
Must we sentence you to an honorable death by traditional hunt? We salute what time you have left.
Jartel screamed and thrashed his claws limbs against the bounds of the stasis field. Monomolecular chitin that could slice steel glided over the field with no effect. The high arched hall from where the tyrant ruled was filled with various other Oimalan and a row of stasis cages, more Shenfen being disposed of. Jartel was seething inwardly. The utter indignity of this weapon development insulted what was a clean and effective war. Prey species shouldn't think or act as they were better than superior hunters. To be sentenced to death by hunt, what did Oilaman think could possibly hunt a Shenfen? Their warrior hive had swarmed over hundreds of worlds with but a pause for breeding. Jartel's thoughts were disturbed by the movement of the stasis cage out into a brightly lit exterior area. The star this planet orbited was close, and the temperature hot. Jartel pressed himself into the shade and couldn't see a single Oimalan. As expected, they would be wallowing in some kind of filth. The landscape was in uncountable shades of green and brown, with rolling flat land extending as far as Jartel could see. Freedom! Nothing could hunt on land like this. There was no cover, no place to stalk, no locations from which to ambush. This was a battle plain, a place of easy visibility and recognition of enemy movements. The stasis field flicked and died, leaving Jartel to collapse into the dark brown, dusty earth. It tasted of carbon and silica. He pushed himself to his hind locomotors, the frontal ones providing balance as his tail stretched out. The Shenfen were a species that worked as a hive, with scouts locating the prey, then drone soldiers, such as Jartel, approaching slowly. A massive leap, powered by two hind locomotors, allowed stretching out, the sword-like claws in the front limbs stabbing deep into the prey. Jartel wouldn't have the luxury of working with the hive, and so slowly moved off in a series of clumsy hops. His locomotors unadapted for elastic energy recovery on landing.
Release the human!
The broadcast rung out over the savannah-like plain. Jartel had no idea what a human was, but wasn't going to stay around to find out. Returning to the hive was his highest priority, as intelligence and where the High Tyrant was needed to be relayed. The star's heat caused the atmosphere to shiver and waver, betraying notions of distance and terrain. Jartel kept moving until he could no longer see the hovering fortress ship of the Oimalan. He was safe enough now, able to rest. Herbivores never could track anything. The creature that appeared within view from his shaded resting spot was thin, stood tall on two limbs, with two other limbs hanging. It was dark brown, near black, and did not appear to hold any threat. It had no visible claws, teeth, or spines. There were no danger markings, and it was just standing there. It did not appear to have any adornment outside of a metallic ring above where the hanging limbs joined the body. Jertal approached it, making slashing motions, and the creature moved away and out of sight. Whatever that was, it wasn't a threat. But if the wildlife around here was inquisitive, it meant that there were no hunters. This might be easier than expected. Jortel moved along, the heat weakening him, but the fresh sense of the herbivore telling fresh play ahead. Whatever animal it was massive or amazingly pungent. This planet the Oymalan had landed on seemed suited for them if large herbivores could roam freely. The fold of the land and the sway of the green-blown grass gave way. The source of the smell was revealed. Massive, four-limbed animals in a tight group, more prey than Jertal had seen at once, more than he could count. Each creature was wide-set, heavy over the front limbs, and smaller over the rear, with large fat horns for defense. Easy. Jertal's moved close, but was spotted. No matter. Just a quick leap and, the creatures had all moved to face him. Standing side by side, they had lowered their horns, and the density of such a weight of prey would have crushed him. Jertal's hissed and snarled as he was forced to move away, lest the massive creatures walk over him. What a planet. The prey grouped up and impervious to a single predator. What pressures had been exerted here? An entire hunting cadre would have been overwhelmed by that mass of meat flesh. Shenfen drones only grouped for battle and otherwise operated solo. The only solo creature he had seen was, there it was again. The standing dark brown creature that shone or maybe glistened in the light, but Jertal was not afraid of it. He was here for meat, for escape, and for a passage off-world. There had to be some kind of starport on this rock. The rotation of the planet lowered the angle of the star to the surface, and Jertal was far away from the Oymalan fortress. This might have been the furthest he had ever traveled under his own power in a single effort. The more he saw of this never-ending brown and green plain, the more he hated this planet. The heavy prey grouped together and stared him down. The lightweight prey bounced away as if they had repulsors for limbs, bringing themselves across the terrain with speed and grace simply impossible to match. And Jertal had not seen any predators that might have caused this. His body ached. The heat cooked his core, and the brightness had hurt his compound eyes. The connection to the hive was weak from distance, and there was not a single indicator of any technology. For a predator, how might have been this place, where the superior species could not hunt? The light was fading into darkness, and new sounds were able to be heard. Violent panic sounds and a high-pitched growling. Something was being attacked out there. Now it made sense. The predators stalked at night, where the open nature of the land was neutralized. Jertal could start to feel this was some place logical. A burrow for this darkness would have to do, and he would move again in the morning. The dirt was loose, and shortly a cavity that fit his entire body was created. The sounds of predator and prey lessened as the darkness grew, but a new sound came to him in the silence, a rhythm of ground impacts, heavy as if something weighty was hitting the ground. Even as if impacts from the bipedal instead of the quadrupedals Jertal had observed. Biped, the bound creature, moving at speed, possibly. The darkness was lifted up as impacts came closer and closer, and a burrow was a place to ambush from, but not one to stay. As the star was rotated into view, and the impending heat hinted at, Jertal managed to resolve the movement of the four-limbed brown creature coming towards him. The locomotives moved individually, and the torso swayed a constant distance above the ground. Whatever this creature was, it clearly was adapted to moving at speed. Something about the movement triggered Jertal. The small brown creature gleaming where the starlight hit it did not act like prey of this world. It was alone. It was coming towards him. It was fast. It acted like a predator. In the open, with no place to hide and stalk from, Jertal turned and hopped away. Slowly, landing with a thump each movement, Jertal's body was expending energy at a great rate to make what a meager distance it could. He cursed his ambush evolution, and how he landed with bone-snapping force rather than a light touch whenever he properly leapt. He cursed the heat of this planet, forcing him to take what small patches of shade there were and rest in them. Most of all, Jetel cursed that singular brown-skinned creature that would not give up. Over rolls of land, through small stands of trees, across rivers, Jetel couldn't shake the chaser. He, nor any individual in his hive, had ever encountered a hunt like this. His heart was pounding, and he could not respirate properly. As he was leaping away, Jetel felt a tendon in his jumping locomotive snap painfully, leaving him lying on his side, crippled. Was this how prey felt, crawling through the dirt in fear, trying to get away after he landed on them? The brown creature came close and stopped. It stood nearby, out of range of Jetel's claws, but as the star slipped closer to darkness again, his slashes became weaker and slower whenever the brown creature closed. Was this a human? Was this the human? Jetel couldn't think. A hive creature, he reverted to instinct under pressure, and scrabbling his forelimbs in the dirt to make a burrow while waving his claws at the thing was the most coherent his actions or thoughts could be. Eventually, even those ceased. The starfaring race, a crack ambush hunter, a decorated fighter pilot, a deep mental link to the entire Shenfen hive, and he was lying in the dust, struggling to breathe after such an extended period of exertion. It was all Jurgen could do to watch as the human seemed to make a decision and picked up a rock, approaching him with an air of finality. Crunch. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.